The notification appeared on my phone at 11:47 on a Tuesday morning, while I was reviewing load calculations for a mixed-use development in downtown Portland. One line. Quiet. Precise. Derek has removed you from Whitmore family. I stared at it the way I stare at a stress fracture in a beam, not with panic, but with the calm focus of someone who knows exactly how much weight a structure can bear before it collapses. My mother's text came 4 seconds later. We've discussed this as a family. You've made your choices. Don't reach out. My sister-in-law had already reacted to it with a heart emoji. I placed my phone screen down on my drafting table. In architecture, the most dangerous moment isn't when a building falls. It's the moment before, when everyone inside still thinks it's standing. I had known for years that the foundation of my family was cracked. I just hadn't let myself measure how deep. I opened my laptop and pulled up 3 browser tabs. The first was the shared cloud storage I'd been paying for since I was 23. My mother didn't trust technology enough to set up her own account, so I had created one, linked my payment method, and handed her the login. For 6 years, every family photo, every scanned document, every contact backup for my parents' phones lived in that account. I went to the billing settings. I didn't cancel it, that would send an immediate email notification. Instead, I navigated to the payment methods and deleted my debit card. I left the field blank. Then I disabled the auto-renewal reminder. The storage plan would keep running on the paid tier for exactly 22 more days. On day 23, it would quietly downgrade to the free tier, and every file above the storage limit would be locked. Not deleted, just sealed behind a wall they couldn't open without me. The second tab was my father's business insurance portal. I was listed as the secondary account holder because 3 years ago, when his contractor's license was flagged for a lapsed payment, he'd asked me to help sort it out. I had, and I'd stayed on the account ever since, because he never asked me to leave. I navigated to the automatic payment schedule and removed my credit card from the billing cycle. The next premium was due in 31 days. I left the policy active. I just made sure it had no way to collect payment. There would be no warning letter, no email alert. He would find out when a client's property claim was rejected for lack of active coverage. A ticking clock, buried under weeks of silence. The third tab was the software license for the project management platform my brother used for his construction company. My brother had started the company 4 years ago with a loan I had quietly absorbed when he couldn't make his second-year payments. He had never technically paid me back. He had also never removed me from the billing account. I updated the email address on the account to a secondary address he'd never seen, then changed the auto-renewal setting to manual. In 45 days, when the annual license expired, someone would have to log in and manually approve the renewal. That someone would need to know the new email. He wouldn't. I closed the laptop. I didn't send a message. I didn't explain myself. I went to my contacts, found my mother, my father, my brother, and his wife, and blocked every number I had for them. Then I walked back to my desk, picked up my drafting pencil, and returned to the load calculations. In architecture, when you discover a structural problem, you don't demolish the building in a rage. You document everything. You prepare. You let the structure show you where it wants to fail. I had been documenting for years. When I was 22, fresh out of graduate school and 2 months into my first real job at a firm, my father called me on a Saturday morning. His voice had the particular tightness it gets when he is about to ask for something he knows he shouldn't. The house on Birchwood, the house where I grew up, where 3 generations of Whitmores had lived, was 3 months behind on its mortgage. The bank had sent a formal notice. He needed $38,000 within 60 days or they would begin foreclosure proceedings. He said it was a temporary setback. He said he would pay me back. He said it would never happen again. I had $41,000 in savings. I had been living on ramen and working 60-hour weeks for 2 years to build that account. I transferred $38,000 the same afternoon. They never paid me back. My mother told the neighbors that my father had renegotiated a favorable refinancing package. She said he'd always had a good relationship with their lender. She described it as a savvy financial move on his part. My name was not mentioned. I was 22 years old and I had just saved my family's home. And I found out about the cover story 3 weeks later at a neighborhood barbecue when Mrs. Harrington told me how impressive my father's financial instincts were. I smiled and said thank you. Then there was my brother. When he decided to leave his job and start a residential construction firm, he needed capital. He came to me the way he always came to me, sideways. Through my mother, who called to casually mention that my brother had such a promising idea, and it would be a shame if he couldn't get it off the ground because of startup cash flow issues. I wrote him a check for $15,000, then another for $8,000 when his equipment lease fell through, then another for $6,500 when he needed to cover payroll during a slow quarter. Total, $29,500. He called it a loan every time. He never once made a payment. And there was the matter of my parents' health insurance, which I had been supplementing for 4 years because my father's contractor plan didn't cover my mother's chronic care appointments. I had added her as a dependent on a secondary supplemental plan I funded entirely from my own account $340 a month, every month, for 4 years without a single acknowledgement. But the worst entry in my ledger wasn't financial. When I was accepted to the graduate architecture program, my parents sat me down at the kitchen table at Birchwood. My mother folded her hands on the tablecloth. My father looked at me with the flat, certain expression he used when he wanted to sound reasonable while being cruel. He said, "You've always been impractical. Architecture school costs a fortune, and the job market is nearly impossible. We don't want to watch you fail. It would be better for everyone if you chose something stable. Accounting, maybe. Something with a defined path." They didn't just discourage me. They handed me a script. "Tell people you're taking a year to think," my mother said, smoothing her skirt. "Tell them you're considering your options. Don't tell them we suggested you reconsider. It sounds bad." So I lied. I told people I was deferring to save money. I moved to a studio apartment 40 minutes away, worked 2 jobs, took out loans, and enrolled anyway. I graduated with honors. I got a job within 6 weeks. I paid off my loans in 4 years. My parents accepted my help throughout all of it, and never once acknowledged that I had proven them wrong. I had been their backup generator, always running in the background, always available, never credited for the power I was providing. And now they had removed me from a group chat and told me not to reach out. Fine. The next morning, I did not wake up to silence. I had blocked every personal number, but I had made the mistake of leaving my work email accessible on my personal tablet. My mother had apparently found the address in an old email thread from years ago and used it. By 8 in the morning, there were 4 messages from her in my work inbox. The first was confused she couldn't access the cloud and thought something was wrong with her phone. The second was annoyed. The third was demanding. The fourth accused me of hacking her account. My father had called my office's main line and left a voicemail that my assistant flagged for me. I played it on my way to a site inspection. "Claire." His voice was the low, controlled register that means he is working very hard to appear calm. "I don't know what you've done to the accounts, but you need to reverse it. This is not a request. If my coverage lapses on any active project and a client's claim gets denied, I am holding you personally liable. I will make sure every firm in this city knows what kind of person you are." I forwarded the voicemail to my personal email and saved it to a folder I had labeled, simply, documentation. 3 days later, my brother called me from a number I didn't recognize, a client phone, it turned out, which is why it came through. He didn't sound angry. He sounded scared, which was worse, because a scared brother always tried to manipulate instead of argue. "Look," he said, "whatever's going on between you and Mom and Dad, that's between you all. But my software access is acting strange, and I have 3 active bids that need the platform to close. Can you just fix it quietly? For the business?" I listened to the full message. I saved it to the folder. I did not return the call. On the 5th day, a handwritten letter arrived at my apartment on my mother's cream stationery. She had always believed handwritten letters carried more moral authority than digital messages. The letter said that I had chosen to abandon my family, that I had been corrupted by ambition and selfishness, and that they were prepared to formalize our separation if I continued down this path. She signed it, "Your mother, Sandra." I photographed it and added it to the folder. I had been documenting for years. What I hadn't known, what none of them had known, was that my grandmother had been documenting too. My grandmother was 81 years old, sharp as a finishing nail, and the only member of my family who had ever looked at me and seen exactly what I was. She had watched me get quietly written out of the mortgage story when I was 22. She had watched me fund my brother's business and receive no acknowledgement. She had watched my parents absorb my help like it was their natural right, and treat my accomplishments like minor inconveniences. She had never said much about it. She just watched, with the specific patience of someone who is composing something longer than a sentence. She called me on the 6th day after the group chat removal, not to discuss the family situation, to tell me she had been diagnosed with a rapidly advancing cardiac condition 8 months earlier, that she had spent those 8 months getting her affairs in order, and that her attorney, Mr. Harmon, would be in touch. She passed away on a Wednesday morning, 4 days after that call. The grief was real and heavy, and I let myself feel all of it, alone in my apartment with the lights low, because she had been the only person in my family who had truly seen me, and now she was gone. Mr. Harmon called Thursday afternoon. The will reading would be held at the house on Birchwood at 10 o'clock Saturday morning. My parents, my brother, and I had all been notified. He paused before he said goodbye, the pause of a man who is choosing his next words with care. Then he said, "Miss Whitmore, your grandmother asked me to tell you personally that she was proud of you. Please be prepared Saturday. I spent Friday the way I spend the day before, a major structural review. Not grieving, not anxious, but preparing. I went to my closet and selected an outfit I almost never wore. A faded gray cardigan, slightly too large, the kind of soft, shapeless garment that makes a person look uncertain of themselves. I found a pair of flat shoes I had been meaning to donate for 2 years. I pulled my hair back loosely, the way it looks when I haven't thought about it. In the bathroom mirror, I looked nothing like a licensed architect who had overseen 14 completed projects and managed a $2.3 million project budget in the last fiscal year alone. I looked like the version of myself my family had always preferred. Small, uncertain, easy to dismiss. Good. In architecture, when you need to test how much weight a structure can truly bear, you don't announce the test in advance. You apply the load and observe where the cracks appear. My family was about to be loaded. I wanted to see exactly where the fractures ran. The house on Birchwood smelled like old wood and framed photographs. The living room had been rearranged, chairs added. A folding table set near the fireplace. A coffee service laid out that my mother had clearly prepared to project an image of composed, dignified grief. She was wearing a dark wool dress. My father's tie was silk. My brother sat beside his wife, both dressed in careful black, the kind of outfit you select when you expect to receive something formal. When I walked in, my mother's gaze moved across me once that quick, cataloging scan that took in the cardigan and the flat shoes, and filed me immediately under irrelevant. "Oh, Claire, you're here," she said, in the tone she used for unexpected arrivals. "There's coffee in the kitchen." She turned back to adjusting the flower arrangement on the mantel. I found the chair furthest from the center of the room, settled into it, and looked at the floor. Mr. Harmon arrived at 10:02 with a leather document case and the unhurried manner of a man who has no emotional stake in the proceedings. He sat at the folding table, arranged his papers, adjusted his glasses, and looked at the room without sentiment. "Thank you all for being here," he said. His voice was even and dry, carrying no warmth and no particular coldness. Eloise was precise in her instructions, and I intend to honor that precision. I'll read the full document and ask that you hold your questions until I'm finished. My father shifted in his chair. "We'd like to move through this efficiently, Philip. It has been a difficult week." "Of course," Mr. Harmon said. He opened the document. My grandmother had been a careful woman. The assets were listed in the order she had acquired them, not by size. The Birchwood house itself, which she had held in her own name since my grandfather's death, appraised at $870,000. A brokerage account, conservatively managed for 30 years, valued at $1.4 million. A savings bond portfolio totaling $310,000. A commercial property in Ashland that had been generating rental income for 16 years, appraised at $620,000. $2 million. The air in the room changed the moment Mr. Harmon finished reading the asset list. It became the specific, electric air of people who have just understood that the number is real and that they are in the room where it is going to be distributed. I watched my mother's hand find my father's arm. I watched my brother lean forward, barely perceptibly, the way a person leans towards something they have already decided belongs to them. His wife stopped checking her phone. I kept my eyes on the floor. "The estate, Mr. Harmon said, looking up over the rims of his glasses, in its entirety, is bequeathed to Eloise's granddaughter, Claire." Silence. The particular, suffocating silence of people whose calculations have just been rendered completely wrong. My father's voice came first, low and controlled. "That is a mistake." "It is not," Mr. Harmon said. "My mother was ill. She was on medication. She was not thinking clearly when she—" "The will was drafted and notarized 8 months ago," Mr. Harmon said, "with full cognitive assessment documentation attached, at your mother's specific request." She anticipated this objection. My mother laughed, a bright, thin sound that had nothing to do with amusement. She turned to look at me, and I let my chin drop slightly, let my shoulders round forward. I looked confused, a little overwhelmed, the way someone looks when a situation is larger than their ability to manage it. "Claire cannot handle something like this," my mother said, and her voice carried the practiced sympathy of someone who has rehearsed concern as a management tool for many years. "Look at her. She has never managed a significant asset in her life. She doesn't even own property." She paused, letting the silence do its work. "She needs support. She needs guidance," my father agreed, and the agreement came too quickly, too coordinated, confirming what I had already suspected. They had rehearsed this too. A trust structure, family oversight. We would be happy to serve as co-administrators while Claire gets settled. It's what my mother would have wanted for her. My brother said nothing, but his wife nodded. I kept my posture soft and my gaze unfocused. I was, in that moment, giving them exactly the performance they needed to do what they were about to do. I was the impractical girl from the kitchen table conversation. I was the daughter who had been handed a script and told to lie about herself to protect the family's reputation. I was everything they had spent years insisting I was. Mr. Harmon removed a separate sheet from his document case and placed it on the folding table. "Eloise included a provision," he said, anticipating that the primary bequest might be challenged on grounds of the beneficiary's competency or capacity to manage the estate. The provision is as follows. Any family member who formally asserts in writing, with signature that the named beneficiary is unfit to manage the estate, will be understood to have voluntarily forfeited their individual bequest, which in this case amounts to $150,000, designated separately for each named secondary beneficiary. He looked at the room. A competency challenge voids the challenger's inheritance. My father processed this for approximately 4 seconds. We are not challenging the will, he said. We are proposing a support structure, family assistance. That is not a challenge. That is care. The provision defines oversight declarations as equivalent to competency challenges, Mr. Harmon said, without inflection. That is completely absurd, my brother said. It was your grandmother's specific language. My father stood up. He moved to the table and picked up the provision document, scanning it. I watched him reading not the way a person absorbs information, but the way a person scans for an exit. He found the section that outlined the emergency administrative transfer mechanism. If 2 family members signed the oversight declaration within the same proceeding, the estate could be temporarily managed by a court-appointed administrator during a review period lasting 4 to 6 months. During that period, the primary bequest would be functionally frozen. He needed money. I could see it in his reading posture, the forward lean, the jaw tight on the left side where he always held tension when he was calculating under pressure. He needed liquidity faster than a contested estate could move. If we sign the oversight declaration together, he said carefully. All 3 of us, Claire included, the estate enters administrative review. The house doesn't transfer immediately. That gives Claire time to understand what she's actually taking on. Time to make a reasonable decision. I don't need time, I said. Everyone in the room looked at me. I sat up straight. I did not raise my voice. I let my shoulders settle into their natural position, the posture I use when I am presenting structural assessments to a room full of engineers who are waiting for me to be wrong. I don't need oversight, I said. And I don't need help. My father's jaw tightened. Claire, you're being... I reviewed the estate documents last night with my own attorney, I said. I understand the tax implications, the probate timeline, the insurance requirements for the Ashland commercial property, and the refinancing options on the Birchwood mortgage. I looked at my father directly for the first time since I walked into that room. Did you know the Birchwood mortgage has been held in Grandma Eloise's name for the past 11 years? Not yours. She was carrying the note this entire time. He went very still. I also know, I continued, that there is a lien on this property from a private lender, filed 4 months ago, $87,000. My mother made a small, compressed sound. The lien has a 60-day resolution window that closes in 19 days, I said. So I understand why today felt urgent to all of you. The silence that followed was a different quality than before. Not the silence of shock. The silence of people who have just understood that they have been seen. My father looked at Mr. Harmon. Whatever she thinks I think a brief recess might be appropriate, Mr. Harmon said. We do not need a recess, my father said. The controlled register was gone from his voice. What had replaced it was harder and more unguarded. We need to discuss this as a family. Privately. Mr. Harmon stays, I said. Claire. My father stepped toward me. He was taller than me by 7 inches, and he had always used height the way some people use volume as a form of weather you simply found yourself inside of, with no choice but to wait it out. You don't understand what you are doing to this family right now. That lien, if it is not resolved in 19 days, the bank can move against this property. Your grandmother left you this house. Do you want to be the one responsible for losing Birchwood? I'm not going to lose it, I said. You cannot afford to satisfy a lien of that size on a... I already have, I said. I transferred the funds this morning. The lien will be fully resolved by end of business today. He stared at me. I am a licensed architect who has overseen capital budgets exceeding $2 million, I said. I have been filing my own taxes since I was 19. I have an excellent relationship with my lender, a credit profile that has never had a late payment, and a professional track record that my firm would be happy to discuss with anyone who asked. I looked at him steadily. I know exactly who I am. You all just haven't been paying close enough attention. My father's expression moved through several things in rapid succession: surprise, recalculation, and then something less controlled. The thing that rises in people when the version of someone they have built in their mind stops being useful to them. You planned this, he said. You and that lawyer. You manipulated a grieving woman into... Stop. Mr. Harmon's voice was not loud, but it carried the particular weight of someone who does not need volume to be heard. Eloise came to me, he said, 8 months ago, of her own initiative, with full documentation, and a written statement of her intentions and her reasoning. She was lucid, deliberate, and among the most organized clients I have worked with in 30 years of estate practice. He looked at my father without expression. She told me in her own words that she had spent the last decade watching one of her grandchildren quietly hold this family together while being told she was the fragile one. She said she wanted to correct the record before she was gone. My father turned back to me. The manufactured composure was entirely gone. If you do not transfer administrative control of that estate to a family trust before the end of this week, he said, I will contact your firm directly. I will tell them you have been misappropriating client funds. I will tell them you are unstable. I will make sure every professional door in this city closes in front of you. I looked at him for a long moment. In structural engineering, there is a principle called the elastic limit. It is the point at which a material has been stressed so far that it can no longer return to its original shape. Past that point, the structure does not recover. It deforms permanently, or it fails completely. He had just passed his. The voicemail you left at my office, I said. The one where you threatened to report me to my licensing board and ensure every firm in the city heard my name in a damaging context. I kept my voice level. I submitted it to my firm's HR department and to my state licensing board's ethics division the morning after I received it, along with a written account of today's events and Mr. Harmon as an available witness. I paused. I didn't call HR in anger. I called my attorney. Everything is already on record. He opened his mouth, and the message left from the unknown number 6 days ago, the one where you said you would come to my apartment and we would have this conversation, whether I wanted to or not. I looked at him. I called the police that same evening. It is logged as a verbal threat. It is on file. He closed his mouth. My brother stood up. This is insane. You're doing this to the entire family because of a group chat? Because of some old grudge? I turned to look at my brother. I had spent years looking at him and choosing not to say the thing I was actually thinking, because I had calculated that the cost of saying it was higher than the cost of continuing to carry it. I was finished making that calculation. I did this, I said, because a person who has been formally cut off from a family does not continue financially supporting that family. You removed me, so I removed my support. That is not a grudge. That is arithmetic. I looked at him steadily. The software license for your project management platform expires in 38 days. The renewal requires manual approval from the account holder. I am the account holder. The renewal email will go to an address you do not have access to. I held his gaze. I genuinely hope your active bids close before then. My brother's face drained of color. His wife grabbed his arm. My mother, who had been silent for several minutes, made a sound that wasn't quite a word, a compressed, disbelieving exhale I had heard before, in moments when she was confronted with a version of events that didn't match the story she had written about herself and about us. We are your family, she said. Her voice was quieter now. The performance of composed grief had come apart somewhere in the last 15 minutes. What was underneath it was not grief, and it was not love. It was the specific bewilderment of someone who has miscounted their available resources and cannot immediately find another source. Eloise would not have wanted this between us. This is not what she... My grandmother called me 6 days before she passed, I said. She told me she was proud of me. She told me she had always seen me, even when no one else did. I picked up my bag from beside the chair. She didn't ask me to forgive anyone. She just wanted me to know I had been seen. That was all she needed to give me. And it was enough. Mr. Harmon was already organizing his papers. My father made one last attempt. His voice, when it came, had been stripped of everything, the silk tie authority, the controlled register, the weather height presence he used as a management tool. What was left was something smaller and rawer than I had ever heard from him. The voice of someone who has just realized that the load-bearing structure they have been standing on was never actually theirs. The house, he said. If you take the house, we have nowhere. That is not my problem to solve, I said. I walked out of the Birchwood living room for what would be the last time as a guest, through the hallway lined with framed family photographs, in which I appeared at the margins slightly out of frame, slightly unfocused, occupying the edges of other people's centered moments. 3 weeks later, my father's contractor coverage flagged a missed premium payment on an active commercial project. His client's property manager discovered the lapse during a routine insurance audit. My father had to personally cover a $22,000 interim liability gap out of pocket. My brother's project management platform locked him out on day 40 of a 45-day grace period. 2 of his 3 active bids required platform access to finalize contracts, and both lapsed. The cloud storage downgraded on day 23 as scheduled. My mother lost access to 6 years of photographs and contacts simultaneously. I did not call to inform anyone of any of this. I found out because Mr. Harmon's office monitored the estate filing for counterclaims, and none ever came. I took possession of the Birchwood house on a Thursday in late autumn. The property manager handed me a set of keys that felt heavier and more ordinary than I had expected. I walked through rooms I had grown up in with the same eyes I use on a structural assessment, noting what was sound, what needed attention, what could be preserved, and what needed to come down to make room for something better. In the upstairs hallway, on the back shelf of the linen closet behind a stack of folded towels, I found a small photograph. Me at 7 years old, sitting on the back porch steps, looking directly into the camera with the unself-conscious seriousness of a child who hasn't yet been taught to make herself smaller. On the back, in my grandmother's handwriting, Claire. She always knew. I stood there with it for a long time. Then I put it carefully in my bag to keep, not as evidence, not as a trophy. Just as a record of the girl who had always been there quietly calculating load tolerances, measuring crack depths, waiting with professional patience for the moment when the structure was ready to show exactly what it could bear. If you have spent years functioning as the foundation of a building that was never designed to hold you up in return, you are allowed to walk away from it. You do not owe structural support to people who told you that you were too weak to be useful. You do not owe your labor to the people who erased your name from the story of your own sacrifice. The load was always theirs. You were just carrying it for them. Set it down. Walk out of the building before it falls, and go build something with your name on every beam.